been successful. So yeah, thanks a lot to all the sponsors. I would also like to thank all the organizers of the event for all their hard work, and also like to thank all the attendees and the speakers for making this event possible. Right, so my name is Anup Tati, and that's my pre-quarantine photo over there. So I'm a SharePoint developer at a company called Content and Code based in London. And that's my Twitter handle, Anup Tells, and I do write blogs on Medium under the account Anup T. I write blogs about SharePoint development mainly, so you can follow me on those two platforms. Right. So the agenda for today's session is, we'll be starting with some background on what provisioning is. Then we'll see why provisioning is needed, and then we'll go on to how to implement provisioning. Then we'll see the different options, and then there'll be a demo, and then finally we will conclude. So the session itself is should be treated as an introduction to the different options for provisioning. So we'll be just having a brief look as to what these options are, rather than going a deep dive into each option. And by the end of session, you would come to know some different techniques that you can use for provisioning teams, and also there'll be some code that I'll be sharing via GitHub. So I'll be providing a link for the code that I've demoed. Right. So what is provisioning? So you might already know about this. It's nothing but creation and configuration of a workspace. So by workspace, I mean it can be a SharePoint site or a Microsoft team. So creation involves setting up the team itself, or setting up the SharePoint site itself, and configuration is nothing but customization. So by customization, I mean changing the settings of the team that is created, and deciding who the owners or the members are, and various other settings. So basically, you would be tuning the workspace or the team that is created to the requirement. And mostly this provisioning is automatic. There's a process in the background which just runs and then goes ahead and creates this workspace. But in some cases, it has to be manual. So by manual, I mean there would be an admin who would get a request, and they would go ahead and say run a PowerShell script, which would go and create a team. Now the manual creation all depends on the policies in the organization, because some organizations don't want automatic creation of teams. So yeah, that's what that's just a brief introduction to what provisioning is. Now, why is it needed? So let's say if end users go ahead and start creating teams, then they might create a lot of teams, and then things might get out of control, because when a team is created, not only does it create the actual team, but in the background, a SharePoint site is created and a group is created, etc. And also there might be different people who will be added to the team, different members, etc. So things might get out of control, and it would be difficult for the administrators to manage that. And also, whenever someone creates a team, they wouldn't know if team is the right thing to create, or they could have just created say a SharePoint site or just an Office 365 group, which would suffice the requirement. The other thing is things around naming conventions. So organizations have different naming conventions, and they might not be adhered to when end users start creating teams. There might be problems around security, like I mentioned. Who are the owners or the members of the team? People might add some members, or people might add some people who are not needed in the team, etc. And then there might be concerns around external sharing as to whether the team should be shared externally or not. So yeah, these are the different problems that would have to be dealt with when teams get created. So what is needed is consistency. So what I mean by that is, just to give an example, say in an organization, we have the R&D department and the finance department. So when a team is created for a project in the R&D department, the visibility of the team should be private. There must be certain owners and certain members of the team. Certain channels have to be created based on what is needed. And then, say in the app catalog of the organization, there are certain apps which are dedicated or which make sense to be present in an R&D team. So only those apps need to be added to the team that gets created. On the other side, when a team for the finance department is created, the same things, depending upon what apps are needed, those apps have to be added to the team that gets created, and the same thing on the channels. Even the member settings. So maybe for the team that gets created in the R&D department, the members shouldn't be allowed to create or update channels or tabs. On the flip side, in another department, this should not be the case. The members should be allowed to create channels. Same with the guest users. And similarly on the settings of the messages inside the team. So you might want to keep a trace of all the messages, so there wouldn't be a provision to say delete the messages. On the other side, you might change the setting to delete the messages, etc. So essentially what I'm trying to say here is, if we have consistency for different types of teams, then there would be more control. So administrators would know what type of team has been created and what are the settings, etc. And then they would be able to manage things accordingly. Right now, let's look at the different options on how to implement this provisioning. So if you consider an implementation, there might be different elements that come into picture. Say you can use combination of SharePoint framework, Flow, Azure functions, PnP, PowerShell, etc. So you can combine all these and then come up with a solution. So let's look at some of the sample implementation options that I've listed over here. Say in organizations where the policy is restricted such that only administrators have to create the team, then maybe end users send a request to the admin, and this can be via an email or say a Teams message, and then administrator goes ahead and runs a PowerShell script based on the request that is received. In other cases, say the end user, instead of sending an email, they would fill out a form in a SharePoint framework web part or a Power Apps form, and then that would then add an item to a list, and then which would trigger a Power Automate flow, and then that say post an adaptive card to the admin group, and then the admin group can then look into that adaptive card and go ahead and create a team by running a PowerShell script. So those can be considered as like manual options. But if everything has to be automated, then instead of Flow posting a message to the admin group, the Flow can send an approval to the admin group or a certain set of approvers, and once they approve that request, the Flow then calls an Azure function, which then goes ahead and creates a team based on the request. We can also include, say, some bots into the picture. They do all the hard work of getting the information, and then just send a request, which would again go ahead and create a team. So these are just some sample implementation options. There'll be a lot of them, if we consider all the different things. But based on the requirement and the policies in an organization, a right approach has to be selected, and the approach selected has to be in such a way that it is efficient for the organization and it is also cost effective. Right. So what we'll do is, before jumping into the demo, I'd just like to tell you all the focus of this presentation, or the focus of the demo. So as you can see, I've listed all these different options over here. So for example, that was option 1, which was mail to admin, and then admin runs the script, and then there's another option which I mentioned where the flow triggers, and then Azure function is called. So all these different options, what they do is in the end they go ahead and trigger or run some kind of code which would in the end go ahead and create a team. So the focus of this demo is this this central part, which is nothing but the code that runs. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at different options, or the different basically different options of how to write this code so that it goes ahead and creates a team. So let me just come out of that and then switch to Visual Studio. Right. Okay. Before this, what I want to show you is this is my developer tenant. As you can see, I've got no teams created over here. So what I do is I just go ahead with implementing this demo with different options, and then we can see how the teams get created. Right. So option number one is using the Teams PowerShell module. So so Microsoft have this module called as Teams PowerShell. Sorry, just give me a minute. And then in that module, Microsoft, they have exposed certain commandlets, and we'll be using making use of those commandlets to create a team. So imagine the scenario might be end user sends an email to admin with all the details of the team that has to be created, and then the admin goes ahead and runs the script. So let me open PowerShell. Go. And then the first thing that first command that needs to be run is connect Microsoft Teams. So just do that. Now what this will do is this should open an authentication window wherein I enter my credentials, and then we will be connected to the Teams. If I can spell my name properly. Okay, so as you can see, we are now connected to the Microsoft Teams environment. The next command that we'll run is called as new team. Here we specify display name of the team, description, and then the visibility. So if I just go ahead and copy that line, come to PowerShell again, and do that. Then in parallel, I just open my Teams in the browser. So as you can see, it has created a team called as Comms First PowerShell. Excuse the naming convention, but it is run from PowerShell script, so that's why the name Comms First PowerShell. Now the next commandlet is adding a user to the team. So you can decide who the members and who the owners are, and then you can use this commandlet called as add team user. So let me just copy that and then go there and run that command. So that'll go ahead and add a user to the team. Let's just quickly verify that. So to the manage team, we should see Adele as the owner of the team. And then what we'll do is we'll just run these couple of commandlets, which will just create a couple of channels in the team. So that's the first commandlet. Run that. Here we say new team channel, and then the commandlet expects something called as group ID, which is nothing but the ID of the group that was created in the background, and then we give it a display name and a nice description. Then hit enter, and then that should go ahead and create a new team. As you can see, that's the output, and we'll just do the same for another channel. So it's not over there. And if I just go ahead and come here, although it says hidden channel, it will just take a couple of minutes to reflect, but these are not hidden. So you can see that the two channels, announcements and training, are created. So that that was option number one. So like I said, this is just an introduction to the different options. So, not only can you create channels, you can, run other commandlets as well, which would go ahead and maybe create a tab or add an app, do change some settings, etc. So this is option number one, which is using the Teams PowerShell module to go ahead and create a team. This particular module, this particular PowerShell module works under the context of an authenticated user. So there must be an admin user who would run this commandlet. So coming back to the example of the R&D and the finance department that I gave earlier. So imagine that we could create a certain number of scripts for different types of departments, and then depending upon the request that arrives, the admin would go ahead and run a script for that department. They can pass in various parameters like the name of the team, description, who the owners are, etc., and run that PowerShell. Run that PowerShell, run all the PowerShell commands, or they can just go ahead and run these commands one by one. Right, so that was option number one. Let me just go ahead and disconnect from the Teams environment. That clear the screen. Right, so that was option number one. Now the second option we'll look at is a console application. Now imagine that this code runs in Azure. So say for example, a user would have entered some details as to what team they want, what's the name of the team, display name, and who the owners are, etc. And that would have added an item to a SharePoint list. That would have triggered a flow. A flow then goes ahead and sends the request to the Azure function with all the details, and then the code that we'll run now is the code that will run in Azure function. So what we are doing here is this is a C# code. So what we do is we create a new object of the class team. In this, we can define all the various elements, say the display name of the team and the description, and then we can say who the owners of the team are. So over here, I've just added myself as the owner of the team. And then we can say all the different channels. So there's an object for creating channels, and then we just go ahead and add new channels. So in the same way, you can go ahead and add new tabs as well. And then after that, you can define all the different member settings. So this is what I mentioned in one of the slides earlier. So you can say what permissions can the members have, whether they are allowed to delete channels or create channels, etc. Similarly for the guest users, and even some fun settings and some message settings as to whether users can edit or delete the messages, etc. And then you can also go ahead and add some of the apps that are present in the app catalog so that it gets added to the team. So we create this object, and then we use something called as a graph service client. So this is nothing but in order to communicate with graph, you have this nice object structure which you can use and then go ahead and call a method called as add async and then pass the team object. So essentially what is happening here is we are using Microsoft Graph to create a team. Now this one doesn't require any user intervention. It all is run in the background with the credentials of an app. So what I've done is if I just go back to my tenant again and just go into the Azure Active Directory, I have created an app registration called as Commvault console app, and then I have given the permissions for the app such that it can go ahead and create a team or create teams with the teams.create Microsoft Graph permission. Also, I've given a user.read also that it can read the information about users. This particular permission team.create is the one that we need, which will go ahead and create a team. Earlier it was groups.read at all, but recently Microsoft Graph, the Graph team have come up with these new application permissions that we can make use of to create teams. So that's what I've done, and what I'll be using is the credentials of this particular app registrations in my app registration in the code. So if I just go into the auth provider, so as you can see, we'll be building a confidential app with the client ID and the client secret that is specified, and then we'll get the access token, and we'll use that access token in order to get our graph service client, and then with the help of that we'll go ahead and create a team. So let me just run this program, and if I just open the Teams window in the background, so this program runs, and then just says creating a team, just a console message, and then finally within a few seconds it should have created the team. As you can see in the background, that's the team that got created. And again, although it says hidden channels, if you give it a couple of minutes, the channels start appearing. So let me just exit out of this program. Yeah, and then it went ahead and created a team, and then added a couple of channels, and also just going to manage team. I can see that my name has been added, or my account has been added as the owner of the team. So again, this one, we are defining this this structure of the team over here, and then we are passing that to Microsoft Graph to go ahead and create a team. Now, so you can imagine we can have one structure for the R&D department team and one structure for the finance department team, etc. Instead of we are defining team here with with this class called as team. Instead of doing this, what you can do is you can create a JSON structure in which you define all the different elements, so name of the team, all the different channels, all the different tabs, and then pass that JSON to the Graph API, and then Graph API utilizes that and then goes ahead and creates a team. So again, you have a couple of options. So I'll be sharing a link of a blog in which Chris O'Brien explains how to use JSON to go ahead and create a team. Right, so that was the second option, which was using some C# code to create a team. Now, third option is using PnP PowerShell. So so Microsoft, you might be already aware of this. There's a team called as Microsoft PnP, which is an open source community, patterns and practices, and the amount of code that is shared there is enormous, and it helps a lot with a lot of operations, with a lot of day-to-day operations. So what we'll be using is something called as PnP PowerShell. So there are certain commandlets which are present in this module. We can utilize that to go ahead and create a team. Now, again, this one will be an automated option, so there won't be any user intervention. So what we have to do is, again, we can either use an existing app registration like the one we saw earlier, or for this demo, what we'll do is we'll just create a new application registration, and then make use of that to connect to the tenant and then create a team. So PnP PowerShell has provided a new command called as initialize PnP PowerShell authentication. So let me just copy that commandlet, and open PowerShell, and then run that. So what I'm doing here is I'm asking it to create an application registration called as comsource PnP PowerShell in that particular tenant, and then this will go ahead and create that app registration. So this is a one-time operation. You have to create an app registration so that you can talk to the tenant via this app. So I'll run this commandlet as an admin user. So when I run that, the first thing it'll prompt me is to pick an account. So I'll just choose that account, which is my administrator account, and then this will go ahead and create the app registration and also take care of the authentication, which is via the certificate, and then we'll come to know the details about this soon. So in the background, it takes about 60 seconds to create this app registration and then associate the certificate, etc. But once that is done, we'll get the credentials of the app registration that gets created, and we can make use of that to go ahead and create a team. So yeah, it's all going okay so far. The demo gods have been farewell to me today. Let's see if this last demo will be fine. So let's give it a few more seconds, and after that I'll just walk you through the script itself and let you know what it does. So yeah, because you are creating this app, you would have to consent for the app, that app, so that it has certain permissions. So these are the default set of permissions, but you can change these permissions anytime. So I'll just go ahead and accept that, and then, like I said, we've now got the credentials of the app, which is nothing but the app ID and the thumbprint. So we just need to copy these and then make use of these in our script. So I'll just copy that app ID and put it over here. I'll explain this commandlet in a minute. And then I'll copy the thumbprint. Then that over here. Right. So now the next commandlet, what we'll do is we'll connect to the tenant and then create a team. So in order to create a team, we have to define the structure of the team. And then for that, what we do is we make use of this XML called as, you can call it as PnP provisioning schema XML. So in this, we define the structure of the team. So as you can see, I've said I want a team with that display name, ComSource PnP PowerShell, and then we give some settings for fund settings, member settings, message settings, etc. And then some owners and members of the team, and then we also say what channels we need. Again, this is a minimalistic team. We can go ahead and add tabs and apps and whatnot. So we define the structure of the team in the XML over here. The other option is we can include JSON in XML. So that's something crazy, but yeah, instead of defining the team as an XML itself, we can use the JSON structure and add it over here. So that's an option as well, but we won't be using that option today. We'll just be sticking with plain XML. And then in this commandlet, first thing we'll do is we'll connect to the tenant. So I'll just copy that commandlet and then on that, and that will go ahead and connect to the tenant. Then what I'll do is I'll just change, go to this directory. Oops. Yeah. So now that we are in this directory, just copy this commandlet in which we are saying apply the template to the tenant, which is defined in this XML. So I'll just copy that and then run that commandlet. So that goes ahead and runs the command. If I just go back to my teams, I can see that the command has run and it has created a team called as ComSource PnP PowerShell. And let's give it a couple of minutes to finish the last operations, which will be creating a couple of channels. And yeah, there it is. So yeah, it has created a couple of channels as we had requested in the template. So yeah, that was the PnP PowerShell option, and the final thing we have to do is just disconnect from the tenant. So if I just go ahead, PowerShell, and disconnect, and then now I am disconnected from the tenant. So yeah, so you can make use of this PnP PowerShell in order to create teams, and as you saw, it all ran in the context of the app that we created. So using the permissions of the app, it went ahead and created the team. So just to quickly show you the app itself. So if I just refresh this page, then just give it a minute. So yeah, that's the app registration we created, and then that was the thumbprint of the certificate which we used for authentication. And then if we see the permissions, those were the permissions that the app had. Whilst I'm here, I'll just go ahead and just delete this app registration. Okay. So so yeah, those were the options. And then one final option that I want to show you is something called as the request a team app template. This is provided by Microsoft. So what we have here is a Power App that can be installed in the tenant, and then you can use this. So the users can use this Power App to go ahead and create a team, put in all the requests, and then submit that request, which will just then go ahead and send an approval to the admin, and then that will go ahead and create a team. So you can. The thing with this is you can use some of the templates that are provided by Microsoft, but yeah, it's one of the options to look at. So I'll be sending I'll be adding a link to this as well in the presentation. And as far as the code that I showed, it'll all be present in GitHub. I'll be adding a link to that as well in the presentation and sharing with you. Right. So let's come back to the presentation. We're nearly there. So yeah, those were the 4 options we saw again using the Teams PowerShell module, wherein we just go ahead and run a couple of PowerShell commandlets that will create a team and add channels. The next option we saw was some C# code which uses Graph Service Client to create a team. Third option we saw was PnP PowerShell, which again you can use some XML and then ultimately hits the Graph endpoint to create a team. Just a note on option 2 and 3, they are using the Microsoft beta endpoint, so just be wary of certain things before using that. But yeah, they are certainly the options to look at. And the final option is request a team using the template that is provided by Microsoft. Right. So in conclusion, what I want to say is time should be spent on choosing the efficient and cost-effective option. So Laura Corcoran, she has written a nice blog on how this can be done. So you can create a flow chart with all the different questions around how many teams need to be created, how many different users need to be present in the team, how much time will it take to set up a team, will the users be comfortable with filling a form and submitting a request, etc. So you can get answers to all these questions and then decide upon an option that suits the organization. And then in case of smaller organizations, provisioning might not be needed, as in automated provisioning might not be needed. So users could be trained on how to create a team with all the different aspects, and then they go ahead and create a team. But you've got different options, so you might not want to go ahead with that option. Again, it all depends on the requirement of. It all depends on the requirement of creating a team. Right. So, so those are the different resources that I have been using to to come up with this presentation. I'll be sharing the presentation as well in some time, and then you can have a look at these different links. They are all very helpful. So yeah, and that's it from my side. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I think James, we have time for Q&A.
Yes, we've got a few questions going. So just a quick reminder that this content will be available on the Commsverse website as a video download, and Anup will be uploading it into the presentations channel, so you can download the PowerPoint and grab all those URLs if you like as well.
Okay.
All right. So we have an anonymous question here. Do you have the option to automatically deploy custom templates that a customer might want to utilize, not the standard Microsoft templates?
All right, that's a good question. So let me just read that again. Yeah, so again, with the use of PnP PowerShell, you can definitely create these templates, which of course use the standard template as the base. But the last option that I suggested, which is request a team, in that you can use some of the templates that Microsoft created. But at the moment, I haven't seen any option to customize those. So if if the templates that are offered by Microsoft do not suffice the requirement, then maybe define a template yourself using say a nice JSON structure, or the PnP schema XML, and then maybe that'll solve the requirement. Hope that has answered the question.
Okay, cool. And the other question was another anonymous one. Is it supported to assign PnP templates to teams? Are there best practices which parts of the teams we can handle with the template?
Okay, so yes, so in sometime last year, PnP have come up with something called as tenant templates. So you can create tenant level elements, and one of the tenant level elements is a team. So yes, if you go into the, I'll post a link to this soon. If you go into the schema definition of the tenant template, you can see all the different options that you can use while creating a game. So the options that I showed were minimal, just like creating a channel and adding the members, etc. But there are quite a few options that can be utilized, and then a team can be created. And PnP keep on improving this schema over and over again. So if you want something that is not there, you can create an issue for that, and PnP team will consider that and then develop that if needed. But yes, as of now, you can create a team with a lot of different options.
Awesome. Well, that's everything we've got, unless anybody had some other questions. Otherwise, Anup will be hanging out over in the breakout session, which I'll post the link for in the chat. I'd also urge anyone to who's got a couple of minutes to fill in our survey. It's really helpful to presenters such as Anup and myself, and even the whole Commsverse team, just to make sure that this event can be even better for you next year. So only takes a minute. Check it out. Otherwise, we'll see you in the breakout session.
Cool, great stuff. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Yes. Thanks, James.